This is, without exaggeration, my 25th try recording this video because my cat is on one right now. But she's chill. She's cute. She's great. She just loves taking a nap on top of my laptop while I'm using it. Hi, I'm Sasan Kasravi. This is Proteus Debate Academy and our third video in the coaching advice series. And I can summarize what this whole thesis of this lesson is about, which is you should have students do rounds as early as possible in them learning debate, as often as possible, whether that's practices or real competition. And it should be the main way they engage with this activity, right? They should be doing debates all the time until it's completely normalized. I'll talk a little bit about the advantages and importance of that, but I think the two big questions that I really want to get into that invites are, one, like, how do you actually get a kid ready to do debates? And what then is the relationship between like giving instructions on how to correctly do something versus just letting someone do it wrong? So let's get into that. In the fifth grade, I was on, I think, the worst basketball team ever assembled. Go Mustangs. But I bring it up to say that even being on that team, none of us were having the concept of basketball introduced to us, right? We had played it at recess. I knew who like a few famous basketball players probably were. I'd played basketball video games. Like, I understood the basic concept. My older sister played it, right? There's two baskets and the basics, right? And that's the way people approach, or like the context in which they start most competitive activities, especially like at school. Debate is different. Debate is a little bit more similar to learning a new board game, whether that's, I don't know, Scrabble, Monopoly, whatever you want to use, right? And the best way to learn a board game is to just jump in and start learning how to play as you play. And then maybe you try doing something, you find out it's against the rules. You basically say, hey, I want to try to do this. Am I allowed to do that? No, well, you have to do it in this way or that way. Okay, cool. And that even applies to much more complex board games like Dungeons and Dragons, right? I started playing Dungeons and Dragons when I was in like 7th or 8th grade with my friends. And at that time, there weren't like popular videos of people playing Dungeons and Dragons that you could watch, and it would model how people play it. And you're like, oh, I want to try that. It was just basically 2 years of us playing wrong and accidentally breaking rules, because the rule book is like this thick. And if we had expected 8 people to sit and read that whole thing before they play the first time, we would never have gotten that far. So I think similarly, right, people make the mistake in debate where they will start teaching debate and they'll be like, okay, so the way we should start by teaching debate is, first, let's show them some videos of debate rounds. Well, no, maybe even before that, let's explain what being on the debate team is going to be, and like what a tournament is like, how nationals is different from state, and how state is different from our local tournaments. And also we have some online stuff, and let's explain what the topics will be. Like, here was last year's topic about concentrated animal feeding operations and this other topic. And then we're going to teach them, first lesson, how to structure an affirmative case, and what makes a good argument and what makes a good impact and the structure they should use. And then we'll watch a debate round and we'll see how they use the stuff that we used. And all of that is really well intentioned, but completely overwhelming and incredibly boring. Nobody joins a debate team. People join a debate team because they want to debate. And putting that as like the carrot at the end of a 1 month long stick just is not a great way to build engagement, but also it makes debate incredibly intimidating. Because one, like, there's very few examples of like what debate is like when you start out. that aren't like detrimental to show people, right? So they're going to be seeing like stuff that is just like way beyond what you want them to be thinking about, and you're making the activity sound and be way more intimidating than it needs to be. So instead, you want to build everything around kids just jumping into rounds with as low stakes and easy a start as possible. So my current boss and current mentor, Deco, would start their classes, and that's something that I've adopted, starting classes with what's called an open forum, which is basically every kid knows when they join that class, like when they go into each day of that practice or that class or whatever, the first thing that's going to happen is there's a topic on the board. And these are 3 slides from 3 classes that I taught last year. And they're going to get a little bit of time to prepare, and then they're going to just jump into a debate round. And it's a very loose structure. We're going to have somebody who agrees say something, somebody who disagrees says something, and then somebody who agrees says something. And they're like 1-minute speeches, and I might give a little bit of like a push on some of the answers, right? Like, let's say money can buy happiness. Someone's like, well, I think money can buy happiness because if there's certain necessities you can't afford, you can't be happy. So it's not that it guarantees happiness, but it buys you one of the necessities in order to be happy. Great argument. I'm going to push you to give specific examples. So can you give me an example of what that necessity would be? And it might be stuff like that, right? But generally speaking, a great way to start is to just get them talking about something anyone can talk about, right? Any kid can talk about why it's better to be rich than famous, or vice versa, whether AI is going to help or hurt us, whether money is what is able to buy happiness, and they can relate that to their own experience. It's a really low threshold for research. And after a few of these, that's not to say you stop doing these, right? But once they've done a couple of these, you can ramp it up to a fully structured debate round with research and everything ahead of time. Here is the one that I've historically done, but I, as of 3-4 weeks ago, can no longer do. And that is Coach Sasan should get a cat. So the way this works, right, for this first debate is I pick a life decision that I am actually considering making. For the past 5 years, that was whether or not I should get a cat. And I tell the kids, whatever this class decides, I will do that thing. So you should genuinely take a decision that you are considering in your life that you think kids might have some level of interest in, which car you should buy, right? Something like that. And you should literally let them choose. And spoilers, for the past 5 years, people have been like, don't get a cat. You don't have enough money. Doesn't seem like you're that responsible. But what's great about this is it's easy to research because they just look up like benefits of cat and whatever. But the debate isn't about whether cats are good. The debate is about whether I should get a cat. So in addition to them learning about cats, they have to learn about me. So I just answer whatever question they have about me, and they have to relate like this thing about cats to whether I should specifically get one. So they're learning, about like uniqueness, the status quo, links, impacts, stuff like that, right? So they'll ask me, what's your income? And I'll tell them my income. They'll say, do you live alone? Do you feel depressed? Are you lonely? Do you have any nice furniture that you don't want scratched? And I will candidly and openly answer these questions. If you're not comfortable with that, pick a topic that you are going to be comfortable candidly and openly answering these questions. It builds a great relationship with the students. They get to know you, and they get this concept. They understand early on that one, like, they're debating for a specific audience, like me, the judge. I have to believe your argument. It's not enough for you to want me to get a cat. You have to make me want to get a cat and to know what my values and priorities are. But also that, like, all of these things relate to specific contexts in the status quo that, like, I specifically have a unique situation related to getting a cat. I think this is a really great way of doing it, and you can apply it to whatever kind. You could do it as an LD type round, the public forum type round, have them give speeches in the correct speech order and kind of learn how the round is supposed to work. And you can redo it. You can do that a few times. It's a great model for doing your first debate that is the same format as the format that they're learning, but not the first topic. I don't recommend starting with the topic. After that, you get these benefits early on, right? Debate is immediately less intimidating. And the lessons that you want to teach later, they have context. So you're not saying like, well, one day you might want to say something like this, and they could say something like this, and if they do, here's how you respond. But they could also respond in these 3 other ways, and here's how you respond to all of those things, right? 1, that's a really bad way of teaching, and 2, it's an ineffective way for even students to be thinking about the round, and you want to stop them from doing that as early as possible because they don't have enough context yet, and their first thought on everything is going to be like, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if they say this? What if they do that? And you want to just get them to build enough trust for you that they're going to just go into a round, let whatever happens happen. Maybe they win. Maybe they lose, but they come back, and then they're going to learn what they could have done differently next time. And that is actually the cycle you're trying to instill. And it's most effective to start doing that before you actually start learning about like border policies or whatever. And it also like gives them a reason to want to learn this thing, right? Like, oh, like how do I do this? It's way different when someone's coming to you with a question about how they can do something rather than you trying to convince them that understanding this will matter to them. Lastly, you don't know what the kids need to learn. You just don't. The way to do that is by sending them to a competition and seeing if that matters. Does delivery matter? I don't know. I'm going to send a kid to a competition, and if they lose because of their delivery, then it does matter, and we'll work on their delivery. If they don't lose any rounds because of their delivery, I guess it didn't matter, or it does matter and they didn't need to be taught it. They're fine. So it's, I think, way more effective to just have kids do rounds and address problems that you see rather than have a preset curriculum that you are trying to teach. And then the final thing that happens once they're ready and have learned all of this is they get to do a round. I think that makes debate rounds way more intimidating than they need to be, and it decontextualizes all of the actual material that they're learning. I already said all of this, but the benefits of doing the rounds are everything that I just said, but also now they do speech redos, right? So like now the speech that they just gave is the context for what I want you to do differently. And it's not this hypothetical thing. It's, okay, now you did this, like, Sasan should not get a cat because it's going to destroy his finances thing, or make it difficult for him to record videos. And what I want you to do is I want you to explain that impact, right? What I want you to do is I want you to tell me a little bit more about the status quo in those situations. And it's way easier to talk about that and for them to understand that when it's in a specific context. And you can also do things like ballot review, right, which are super, super important. But also, really, really importantly, debaters are never going to be less worried about doing debate than you are. They're never going to be less scared for themselves than you are scared for them. They are looking to you to determine how scared they should be. They might be, often are, more worried than you are, but unless you can model for them that it is fine for you to go to a round and lose, like that is normal and a part of the process, unless you can model that for them, they are never going to have that mentality about it, right? So one of the important ways of modeling that for them is to not display anxiousness that they're not ready. They don't need to be ready. They just need to go into a room, say some stuff, have some fun, make some friends, get a ballot, and then they'll learn from the thing that's on the ballot, right? Right. So what do my high school students know going into the first round of the actual competition that we send them to? And this is in LD, public forum. Right now, I'm just coaching Congress. So they are going to know what the topic is in the context of Congress. They're going to know they're supposed to speak for 3 minutes. I'll have given them like an introductory lecture on like, hey, what makes a good argument? That is relevant, that is accurate, that is significant, right? That teaches them the basics of like, I don't go into like, this is called a link. This is the status quo. Here is how you challenge evidence. Here's the ways of weighing impacts. I will just talk about like those concepts in broad strokes and give them something like to work on, right? So give them something to build when they're trying to write their arguments. Well, what should I say about this topic? Well, if you have a reason why you think like their first topic is about GMOs, right? If you have something you want to say about GMOs, like tell me how that relates to this bill. Tell me like some support for like why you think your argument's true, and then tell me why it's important. And they know that the judge picks a winner, and I explain the role of that, and I tell them loosely how the round is structured. I don't tell them like, here's how you make a motion to do whatever. They're going to go into the round. They're going to not know what's going on, and they'll probably figure it out during the round. And if not, they'll figure it out the second time, or they'll come to me with a question, right? But we want to normalize the feeling of not knowing what's going on, because otherwise they're going to just learn much, much slower. And with my college students, I would do even less. With my college Parley students, I would have them know how to construct an AF. So basically the AF proposes a plan. What is that? How do you write a plan? And they need to know advantage structure. So it's 3 lectures. It's like writing a plan and like how that works, which also kind of introduces just the very broad basic strokes of how Parley works as a game. There's a topic, the AF comes up with a plan, the negative says we shouldn't do that, you each get 20 minutes to prepare. Then we have advantage structure. So like what's bad right now? What does the plan do? How does that improve things? Why does that matter? And then we talk about disadvantages. And when I teach those, we use an example. A lot of times that's like, let's get a dog. Sasan should get a cat. And we apply that to these structures, and they get a few at bats at that, and then we just send them to their first tournament. And the worst thing, is this the next slide? The worst thing that can happen, the worst case scenario that can happen is that your student wins every single round. Why do you not want that? You don't want that because Randy. You don't want that because, one, you're going to look like an asshole. Like, you're just going to look like this kid you entered in novice should not have been entered in novice, right? You're not going to look amazing because your student was able to beat every other student who just started. So, one, like, optics on that, no one's going to be impressed. But secondly, they're not going to walk away with a thing that they are going to work on, right? If they walk out of a round the first time and they're like, hey, I don't know what this thing is, that's great. You're like, okay, I'm going to teach this to you next. Oh God, Randy's coming up. Randy, what are you going to do? 25th take, Randy. I think that's fine. We're still in this. The other bad thing, right? Norm Macdonald was a comedian, but also a degenerate gambler. Lost every dollar he had 3 separate times in his life. And he said that the worst thing that can happen to you gambling the first time is that you win, because it just sets a terrible precedent, right? And I think a debater who, oh my God, how could I be mad at this girl? A debater who goes into their first round and everything they try works and whatever cannot be reasoned with, right? They cannot be told like, well, that's actually not that effective. And even if they go to their second competition and they like lose terribly, they're just going to be like, oh, that judge is wrong. They might even feel that way their first time competing. But the point is, you don't want a debater to develop an ego the first time around, right? So you want to normalize losing. Losing is when we learn. Have debate rounds as often as possible. So you want to normalize all of the things here. And I already kind of talked about these, but the goal is to have debates with each student who's like an actual competitor at least once a week. And this doesn't happen on most teams and with most debaters because people will be finishing their cases going to like the night before the tournament, right? That means they can't have practiced with that specific case before the tournament. You need to explain to them, and this is something I say all the time, right? It's not a speech writing competition. It's a speech giving competition. It's not a debate case writing competition. It's a debate competition. The preparation work doesn't start until your debate case is written. But people don't do that, and that keeps them from getting practice. And they don't debate unrelated topics, and so they never actually get a practice before they go to a competition, right? Like these unrelated topics that I'm telling you to debate at least gets around the, hey, like I don't have my case ready on like the border policy or whatever it is. And when should you not debate? There's a picture right here of Hwoarang from Tekken. That's who I play. And this is a great example of like when not to keep playing, doing rounds. When I play Tekken, I start up the game, I go immediately to ranked mode, and then I win about half of my matches and lose about half of my matches because I'm at the correct rank. And then I turn off the game and I never play again. And I have completely plateaued and will not make any improvement until I stop doing this. It's because I'm not like doing anything different, right? I'm just reinforcing the same habits that I've already built, which at this stage are working for me about 50% of the time. So when somebody has plateaued like that, right, they need to be doing things like learning new things through lectures, watching tapes, most importantly, like doing drills, right? Like building muscle memory for things that they're not doing in a full round yet, working on just this small context of when it would happen, and then incorporating that into their like muscle memory for like a full round, right? And judging rounds, right? Getting a sense of, okay, when I make a decision in a round, what are the things that I actually think matter? And all of this stuff is in Paul's video, like how to get better at debate. And I would say, like, when you are just autopiloting every debate round that you're in, you should be doing something else on top of doing debate practices. But until that moment, I think really just have practice debates all the time and some feedback after. And I talked about feedback in the last one, right? Like focused, pointed feedback on a specific thing you want them to do differently. Ideally, a redo after that where they can enact the thing that you told them to do differently. But I think starting with big picture instruction and like video examples of what they should do and stuff like that is really unproductive. This was a longer video than I intended it to be, but also it took me many more hours than I intended it to take. So I appreciate your patience, and yeah, I'll catch you in the next one.